The legend tells that 20 kingdoms joined forces to end an evil great kingdom that defended freedom for all people. All of them, including commoners and even slaves and other races. They had great technology that gave them a power with which they maintained their dominance, with 3 powerful weapons that prevented anyone to be able to get rid of their anarchic ideals. But those 20 countries allied and managed to end them, and the 20 royal families reached the status of gods and formed the world government, a huge organization that seeks the best for humans. But they were so humble that didn't want to boast of such a feat, and that part of the history has been lost forever. But which were those 20 kingdoms? Well, I've been looking for them, and here I bring my conclusions. So, welcome to Bartolomeo Meo Mugiwara fans, and let's see what I found. We have the advantage of knowing well 2 of those 20 kingdoms, at 10%, and we can look at the characteristics that we should look for in the candidates. We also know the ideology they had because they are still having it. They are racist and classist. This already rules out any non-human kingdom, such as Sou, Fishman Island, Elbaf, etc. And that classism that makes the nobles are about the rest of the people leaves a trace in their kingdoms, as we could see in the ones we know, Dressrosa and Arabasta. Despite we have known them well and seen kind kings who do not follow those ideals, they are living in great palaces built on high places in order to look down to the people. Those palaces are the ones the old royal families left behind when they moved to Marijos, which is nothing more than a larger version of this model, a luxurious city built above the rest of the world. In Dressrosa, Tontata tribes summarized their history by telling that they were in slavery until 800 years ago, when Don Quixote family left, and they were happy with Rico family until Doflamingo appeared. And this even if Don Quixote family are considered the moderate ones among the celestial dragons. We must also mention that the case of Arabasta is an exception, since it is the only one of those 20 kingdoms that refused to move to Marijoa, so the current royal family is descendant of the ones who fought against the Great Kingdom. But we can assume that generations can change their mentality along 800 years, and kingdoms may also change and even cease to exist due to wars. We must consider this in our analysis of the candidates, but the theory that I published is that Arabasta already changed their mind 800 years ago, and that's why they refused to move to Marijos. That seems to be the only explanation for them to hide a poneglyph and, as all seems to point, one of the ancient weapons. This is something that seems to have come to light in the last reverie, and we'll have more information about it soon. There is another thing that could help us a lot by limiting the options. When the royal families created the world government, it would be logical for them to start by joining their kingdoms to the organization, so those 20 kingdoms should be the first ones to be part of the world government, and therefore, most of them should be still part of it nowadays. And this gives us a place to start our research. This table of 50 kings, from which we can already rule out one of them, since it was invited to the reverie just recently because they are not humans, Ryugu Kingdom. Let's go for them, starting from those we already know. But I can advance that we are not going to be able to get the complete list of 20 kingdoms, since there is not enough information, and even among them, there will surely be kingdoms that we have not heard of. But I think we can bring good candidates. Let's start by the one that is more clear, a kingdom that Dragon himself defined as a model of what the world will be like, where people of lesser class can be thrown away like garbage. He knows well this kingdom since it is his motherland, Goa. What we have in Goa is the model society for the world government, a high area where nobles live, and above them the royal family in a big palace. All who live outside those walls are considered inferior. It's not only part of the world government, but they are big fans of the celestial dragons, and it is the only distant area that we've seen being visited by a celestial dragon. This is what made me think that the infamous bridge that the world nobles asked to build might have Goa as destination, since it is also following that direction. Curiously, the kingdom that most represents the values of the world government is also the place of origin of more this that we know of. Garp, Dragon, and Laffy were born there, and even he wasn't born there, it is where Ace grew up. This could also be something to keep in mind, and we will have to look if the home kingdoms of the other Ds that we know of might also be candidates. The few we saw of Batterilla, the island in the South Blue where Ace and his mother Portgas the Roach were born, doesn't seem to follow the profile. But we really don't know what that kingdom is like, or even if it is a kingdom. However, the kingdom where Trafalgar Law was born, Flevans, does match the profile. We got to see that kingdom in Law's tragic childhood, with the Amber Lead syndrome as protagonist, a disease caused by poisoning due to amber lead, the ore that was bringing wealth to the country. We couldn't see the king, but we were told the world government and the royal family had known for 100 years that the mineral was poisonous, but decided together to keep that information as a secret, in order to not to stop the economic benefits of that industry. This collusion between the king and the world government is pointing to a good relationship between them, and again, that cruelty of seeing the people as disposable. That kingdom no longer exists, so it cannot be in the reverie, but the royal family fled, leaving the country before it was destroyed. Polestar Island, mostly occupied by Lockton City, is where Goldie Roger was born and died. We were never told if it is a kingdom, so even though we could see multiple locations of the island, we don't know if it could be in our list. Something similar happens with Blackbird, where the little we saw of the island where he joined Whitebird doesn't allow us to know if it could be a candidate. But he could easily have been born elsewhere, like Shikeharu Kingdom, for example, that does follow the profile. The name might not sound to you, it no longer exists. That was the kingdom that was on Kuraigana Island, an island that we know well because Zoro spent the 2 years of the time skip there. Mihawk explained that the people there were very violent and were always fighting until they killed each other 7 years ago, and that the mongrels living in the island have an extraordinary ability of learning from humans, so they became great fighters by impersonating what they saw. 7 years ago, Blackbird was in Whitebird's crew, but if we look at the ways the baboons fight that were learned from the humans, this one stands out since we only have seen one character using it. Anyway, even if Teach is originally from Shikeharu Kingdom, that wouldn't confirm the possibility that these are coming from the 20 kingdoms of the Celestial Dragons. But with that huge castle for the royal family, it could be in that group of kingdoms. I already advanced that we could find kingdoms that would have disappeared in the last 800 years. And regarding the Ds, we still have Rox D. Shevek and Jaguar D. Soul left, from which we don't know anything about the origin, but something curious is that they wanted to make it clear that Soul didn't come from Elbaf, something that would have ruled out this theory of Ds, the so-called natural enemies of the gods, appear in the kingdoms from which the gods came. Something to think about. Let's go on with the islands we know well. A big castle, located in a very high place above the people, is what we have in Dran, renamed as Sakura Kingdom after the Straw Hats were there. The fact is that Weipol, the antagonist of the arc, inherited the throne when his father died, so even if they were looking like a pirate group, he belongs to the royal family that lived in that castle. Here we have all the parameters we are asking for a candidate, since this kingdom also belongs to the world government and the king attends the reverie. But the thing doesn't end here. It seems that Wapol, even being the scam, is well considered by the world nobles, and they granted him a kingdom after making a fortune, and he is invited to the reverie as king of the Black Drum Kingdom. Here we could have another candidate if we think that Celestial Dragons could have one of their kingdoms orphaned from a royal family to give him, and that huge castle already existed 800 years ago. Lulusia Kingdom also seems to match the profile. We've already met the royal family of this kingdom with the princess that was kidnapped in her trip to the reverie and the king Seki Marijois. We also were able to see the island and its people, since that was the scenario chosen for the introduction of the commanders of the Revolutionary Army. People stated that they were oppressed to obtain the tribute for the king and celestial dragons, and they could be killed if were unable to pay. The castle of the royal family stands out above the city. The next is a kingdom that we hear about and we could knew the king, Prudence. We've seen that the king of Prudence and King Riku get along, and they even went to the reverie together. Their islands are nearby, and this relationship between neighbors might have existed with the previous royal families. there is a good chance of considering it a candidate, since we have this image of the castle. Even if the top with the shape of the king couldn't have been there 800 years ago, the rest might be there, and that would just be a recent improvement. In the Straw Hat Grand Fleet, we got the leader of the Hapo Navy, Sai, who is in the reverie as a bodyguard of the king of the Kano country. We got this image of the majestic palace of the royal family. Here we have another candidate for our list that I'm marking too. And continuing with the Grand Fleet, we got a similar case in the Kingdom of Standing, the one Orlumbus is from, another kingdom with a great castle for the royal family, and the king is so cruel that he ordered the Jonta Maria fleet to be sunk when Orlumbus quit as adventurer. However, we don't know if this kingdom belongs to the world government. In a similar way, we have this other kingdom with a huge palace, Bourgois, from which we also have his prince in the Grand Fleet, since the son of the king is Cavendish. These last two are kingdoms that we don't know if they belong to the world government, but they well might, and they're matching the profile for everything else. In this group, we could also add the Lunel Kingdom in the North Blue, the one Mont Blanc Nolan was from. We were told that they needed permission from Mary Joyce for the expedition. The king executed Nolan because he couldn't show him the city of gold, and the image we got of this kingdom shows a big palace once again above the town. We've got into a more speculative part of this analysis, where I'm presenting candidates which might be in the group we seek, but from which we just don't know enough about. Another kingdom related to Cavendish is Romer, based on the Victorian London, in order to give the murders of Hakuba, Cavendish's Mr. Hyde, the atmosphere of Jack the Ripper. We don't know anything else about this kingdom, but if it is based on England, it would make sense they would have a royal family in a palace, and if so, it would be logical that this was their king, right? So I'm going to mark it too. The river is full of kingdoms clearly based on real countries that we cannot analyze because that reference is all we got. Still, I'm going to point one of them out, the one based on Russia, Roswan, and that's just because of the name, which is close enough to that of one of the celestial dragons that we know best, Roswar, as for mentioning here, just in case. And I've left the two that might surprise the most for last, the Kingdom of Sorbet, where Bartholomew Kuma was king, and apparently Jebel Riboni too. Kuma earned the nickname of the Tyrant, so he probably didn't rule kindly. It's clear that Kuma and Bonnie have some relationship with the world government, so despite Kuma belonging to the Revolutionary Army, the reason why I haven't considered Kamabaka Kingdom, that was a hidden fact for the world government, and there is a story yet to be told here. I think there is enough material as per thinking Sorbet Kingdom could be one of those 20 kingdoms we are looking for. Do you really think the Guardians in Marius know how every member of every royal family in the world government looks like? Because they recognize the Sorbet's widow queen at once. And let's finish with a unique kingdom that is not in this reverie either, Yerma 66. I'm saying it is unique because it does not have an island. It's a landless kingdom, but it had once, so Judge is pushing his family to recover the former glory of this kingdom. But despite all this, it was still belonging to the world government and was invited to reveries until being expelled in the latter because of the alliance they wanted to make with Big Mom. There must be a reason why the world government was keeping its status despite having no land and the subjects being mostly artificially created clones. We also know they have wiped out other kingdoms that might be on this list. Well, this has been the result of my research. I hope this geographical correlation has been more funny than tedious. We have finally marked 10 out of the 50 kingdoms in the reverie and pointed another 7 as candidates matching the profile. I hope you liked it, and if so, we might meet in another video. See ya!